Good evening. Will the Standing Committee on Social and Economic Development please come to order? Before the committee can proceed with the business before it, it must elect a chairperson. Are there any nominations? Minister Fontaine.
I elect MLA Carla Compton.
MLA Compton has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, MLA Compton, will you please take the chair?
So our next item of business is the election of a vice chairperson. Are there any nominations? MLA Redhead.
I nominate MLA Loisel.
So MLA Loisel has been nominated. Are there any other nominations? Hearing no other nominations, MLA Loisel is elected vice chairperson. This meeting has been called to consider the following bills. Bill 6, the Sign Languages Recognition Act. Bill 36, the Child and Family Services Amendment Act. The Legislative Assembly received requests for there to be American Sign Language, ASL, interpreters at committee this evening. The Assembly has arranged for there to be 2 ASL interpreters physically in the room to provide in-person, simultaneous interpretation for presenters who have requested interpretation for their presentation and the subsequent question period. In addition, we will have live, simultaneous ASL interpretation on our public broadcast for the duration of the whole meeting. This will be shown on the screen in the public gallery. Once the presentations have concluded, the interpreters present in the room will be leaving. Interpretation will still be available on the public broadcast. This is the first time the Legislative Assembly has provided ASL interpretation in this way. If there are any comments or feedback, our Deputy Clerk, Tim Abbott, would be pleased to hear from you. With this in mind, I have a leave request for the committee. Is there leave to begin public presentations with those who have requested ASL interpretation?
Agreed.
Agreed and so ordered. Also, we have had a request from one of the registered presenters who has requested ASL interpretation, Richard Zimmer, who is unable to stay late and is asking to present first. Is there leave for Richard Zimmer to be the first public presenter?
Agreed.
Agreed and so ordered. I would like to inform all in attendance of the provisions in our rules regarding the hour of adjournment. A standing committee meeting to consider a bill must not sit past midnight to hear public presentations or to consider clause by clause of a bill, except by unanimous consent of the committee. I would also like to inform all members of the public in the gallery of the rules of decorum for standing committees. Please note that any participation from the gallery is not allowed. Examples of specific actions that are not allowed include clapping, cheering, or interrupting presentations. Taking photos or video of the meeting is also not allowed. And please set your phones to mute. I thank everyone in advance for their cooperation. Prior to proceeding with public presentations, I would like to advise members of the public regarding the process for speaking in a committee. In accordance with our rules, a time limit of 10 minutes has been allotted for presentations, with another 5 minutes allowed for questions from committee members. Questions shall not exceed 45 seconds in length, with no time limit for answers. Questions may be addressed to presenters in the following rotation. First, the minister sponsoring the bill or another member of their caucus. Second, a member of the official opposition. And third, an independent member. If a presenter is not in attendance when their name is called, they will be dropped to the bottom of the list. If the presenter is not in attendance when their name is called a second time, they will be removed from the presenter's list. The proceedings of our meetings are recorded in order to provide a verbatim transcript. Each time someone wishes to speak, whether it be an MLA or a presenter, I first have to say the person's name. This is the signal for the Hansard recorder to turn the mics on and off. Written submissions from the following persons have been received and distributed to committee members. Cheryl Smukowicz, Manitoba School Boards Association on Bill 6, and Colin Kinsella, Manitoba Kiwatanowi Okamakinak Incorporated on Bill 36. Does the committee agree to have these documents appear in Hansard transcript of this meeting?
Agreed.
Agreed, and so ordered. On the topic of determining the order of public presentations, I will note that we have out-of-town presenters registered, and they are marked with an asterisk on the list. Taking into account the leave requests earlier to allow Richard Zimmer to present first, followed by the remaining people who have requested ASL interpretation for their presentations, in what order does the committee wish to hear the remainder of the presentations? MLA Loisel.
Out-of-town presenters first.
So I've heard, so we will have Richard Zimmer first, and then out-of-town presenters, and then in-person presenters. Okay, so that is the plan. Thank you. Thank you for your patience, and we will now proceed with public presentations. Okay.
So Mr. Zimmer is joining us on Zoom.
Okay, I just need to go. Okay, so I will now call on Mr. Zimmer, and he is attending virtually. So Mr. Zimmer, if you could turn on your microphone and your video, please. There we go.
There's a substitution.
Minister Azagora isn't a member. So
Okay, so Mr. Zimmer, please proceed with your presentation.
Hello. First of all, I would like to say thank you for allowing me this opportunity to participate. Unfortunately, I can't see the interpreter, because it's only 1 inch by 1 inch, so that might pose a challenge. My name is Richard Zimmer. I have been deaf since birth. I have 11 siblings, and I am the youngest. 6 are hearing, 5 are deaf, but all use sign language. And I feel very fortunate to have grown up in that environment. Both of my parents can hear, however, they never perceived their deaf children as being anything different. They just treated them equally as they would all of their children. I went to a deaf school and graduated from there, and then went on to post-secondary education at Gallaudet University.
with a BA.
And I graduated with a BA. And then I worked as an instructor. So in terms of the recognition of ASL, LSQ, and Indigenous Sign Languages in this bill, the reason I've chosen to speak to it tonight is in terms of recognizing the languages, I think it gives some credence to the fact that these are bona fide languages, and I'll speak to that a bit later. I want to just now talk about Martha's Vineyard. In the 1600s, it's interesting, maybe some of you don't know this, but that community, everybody used sign language, whether they were deaf or they could hear. So sign language was considered a complete language that everybody used for communication. So that was Martha's Vineyard 1.0, and I'll come back to that. So that recognition of sign language as a bona fide language, not a tool for communication, is an important distinction. Next, I'd like to speak about the recognition of culture. By recognizing signed languages, it also recognizes the culture of the sign language community. There has been a lot of, the linguistic community has obviously expanded, and with that comes identity, education, participation in society. And I believe that cultural component is an important part of the recognition. So if we look back in history, a lot of policies that were made had a medical view towards people who are deaf. And because of that, deaf people, or the sign language community, was not recognized as a unique linguistic community. So in this recognition, I see the commitment from the Manitoba government. However, I would like to see more in terms of access to communication in signed languages. By doing so, it would promote an awareness of our culture and the use of sign language in education settings and in public service. Next, I'd like to speak to how policies can impact people. So as I've said, recognition of signed languages is only part of what we would like to see. Because ultimately, we are looking for better education for deaf children and more access to interpreting services in ASL, LSQ, and Indigenous Sign Languages. And I want to really emphasize that I want to emphasize the importance of having deaf-led programs. I think recognition of signed languages may lead to future funding, and that will give the sign language community or deaf community the independence that they need in order to make decisions on their behalf. Now, in speaking specifically about Manitoba, if a sign language policy were to be implemented, then Manitoba would be a leader in terms of deaf people's rights. So if it is enacted in legislation, it has this broader impact. So I want to go back to my comment about this medical perspective of deafness or signed language use. So if the awareness is broadened, then that view also changes. And it allows people to exercise their rights as citizens. So in summary, speaking to Bill 6, if it is passed, Manitoba will officially recognize sign languages and the deaf community, and that will have a trickle-down effect on policies and ultimately education and public service and access to government communication. And I foresee a much broader impact of inclusion of deaf people in society. Now, going back to Martha's Vineyard, version 1.0, I believe this would be Martha's, pardon me, that was an interpreter error. I was recounting a historical perspective of Martha's Vineyard. However, if this bill is passed, then this will be Martha's Vineyard 1.0. 2.0, pardon me.
So thank you for your presentation, Mr. Zimmer. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Minister Fontaine.
I just want to say miigwech and thank you to Mr. Zimmer for his really important contribution to this evening's standing committee. And I appreciate the opportunities that we've had to work together in respect of greater recognition of deaf and hard of hearing culture. And I appreciate the expertise and the teachings that you have shared with us. And I just want to say miigwech for your presentation this evening.
Mr. Zimmer, would you like to respond?
I'm now seeing two different screens and I don't see an interpreter, so I'm not actually sure what's going on right now. Where is the interpreter? How can I access the interpreter?
So,
Oh, this is unfortunate.
just let him know that we're trying to fix it.
So, Mr. Zimmer, apologies, we're trying to clarify. Are you able to see the online ASL interpreter, Mr. Zimmer? We've currently paused your
Very
time.
small.
As I said, I can only see the interpreter in a very, very small frame.
Oh, no.
I need to see the interpreter in a larger frame. So if I can make it go full screen, I don't know. It's just a 1-inch picture-in-picture here.
Okay.
Oh, that's much better.
Oh, it was
Oh,
there.
that's much better, yes.
Okay. Should we
I
restart?
would
Okay,
just ask the committee if it's okay if we start questions.
Committee, is it okay if we just restart that Q&A part? Okay, thanks. Okay, take two. So Minister Fontaine will give you opportunity to share your response.
I can't see the interpreter again. Oh, I can see the interpreter now. Yes, now that the interpreter is full screen, I can, and can you please keep the interpreter in this view?
So Minister Fontaine.
I just wanted to say miigwech and thank you to Mr. Zimmer for your presentation this evening. And as you can see, in the last many months, the Legislative Assembly has put into place ASL interpretation, picture-in-picture. Sometimes there's still some hiccups. I think it's really important to understand, those folks that are online and watching this, this is actually the first time that we're doing this in the history of the Manitoba Legislature. And so I do want to just thank our legislative clerks who have put a lot of effort and time to make sure. Sometimes there's hiccups, but it really is a testament, hiccups and all, it really is a testament to how hard the government and the Legislative Assembly are trying to do things right to respect all Manitobans. So I just want to say miigwech, Mr. Zimmerman, for your presentation today.
Mr. Zimmer, would you like to respond to Minister Fontaine?
Yes, I would. If I could make a suggestion for the future, perhaps you should consult with deaf people prior to setting up accessibility measures. Because if deaf people were involved, they would be able to give you the advice that you need. We are often an afterthought. And so I think that with consultation with the deaf community, any future meetings that you have in this format will be much more effective with consultation from the community. So I'm happy to take any other questions.
MLA Byram.
Thank you, Mr. Zimmer, for presenting here tonight, and also being patient as we move through some of these hiccups. Sharing some of your insight into what your challenges are and barriers is welcomed, and also just your experience here tonight as we're working through this. I think that helps with future planning. I also want to just say a shout out to our interpreters who are here with us tonight, the ASL interpreters, who do a great job in providing the service so that you can, and so that we can all be working towards getting this legislation put forward, and your input on this. So thank you very much for taking the time and sharing with us here tonight.
Mr. Zimmer, would you like to respond?
I have had some experience with the Canada Accessibility Act. And one thing, even since that act was passed, we don't see captioning on the CBC News. And so it's disappointing that an Accessibility Act is passed, but then there's still not accessibility features. So my concern is that Bill 6 might just be a token representation of what actually really needs to happen. So deaf people have rights. We pay taxes, and we believe that we should have equal access. And again, as I mentioned, I think Manitoba has an opportunity to be a leader, and if provisions are put in place, then Manitoba will actually exceed what the Canada Accessibility Act is doing.
Minister Fontaine.
So I just want to provide some information for Mr. Zimmer, some direct contact information for the Deputy Clerk of the Manitoba Legislative Assembly. His name is Tim Abbott. He is the lead for the Manitoba Legislative Assembly and has been doing a very good job in respect of making sure that we've got the ASL picture-in-picture infrastructure for the Manitoba Legislature. But he would be more than willing to chat with you directly. His number is 204-945-0796. We can, or the Legislative Assembly, the clerks can also send you his contact information. He agrees, yeah.
Mr. Zimmer, would you like to respond a little bit more?
Okay, I see that my time is up, so I just wanted to say thank you very much for this opportunity to convey the points that I have shared with you tonight. And I think that Bill 6 is good, but it can be better. Thank you very much.
All right, thank you for your presentation. So we are moving to the next out-of-town presenter. So that actually takes us to Bill 36.
Oh, no.
Oh,
We do all the ASL first.
oh, my mistake.
Yeah, sorry.
We will go back.
So Andrew. And Andrew is also joining us on Zoom.
Okay, so next I will now call on Mr. Andrew Stadnicki, private citizen. He is also joining us from online. And so Mr. Stadnicki, if you could turn on your camera. Okay, hello, and please proceed with your presentation.
Before I proceed, I did email and I sent an email in and let the moderator know that I would have my own interpreter with me tonight. And can you please allow them into the Zoom room?
So do I promote the interpreter to Jen? Do I promote the interpreter as well?
Yes, this will be fine. We're just getting your interpreter on as well.
Can the room hear me?
Yes.
And I'm
Okay.
going to turn my camera off.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, that's great. And so please proceed with your presentation.
Before the time begins, there are some things I'd like to say about the frustrations we are having around access for this particular session. As was mentioned, the interpreter was very small, and that was not accessible. I'm glad that Mr. Zimmer has mentioned that, and there has been changes made. I did bring my own interpreter, and I will begin my presentation now. My name is Andrew Stadnicki, and I am a third-generation deaf person. I attended deaf schools my entire life, and I graduated with a bachelor's and a master's in business administration from Rochester Institute of Technology. The World Federation of the Deaf calls on governments and event organizers to recognize that deaf people have a right to choose their interpretation services. ASL is not the native language of most interpreters, and I feel in order to feel confident that my message will be interpreted accurately, I have brought my own interpreter at my own expense. Every deaf person should have the right to choose accessibility that works best for them. I am here to speak to Bill 6. I am not against recognition, but recognition alone does not change lives. I read the bill in its entirety, all of it. It is one sentence. Section 1 says, Sign languages are the primary languages of the deaf community in Manitoba. And Section 2 is a citation reference. And Section 3 says it comes into force on royal assent. That is not the entire bill. There is no funding in this bill. There is no enforcement in this bill. There are no timelines, no expectations, no consequences if nothing changes. When a language is called official, government has obligations, and this bill uses one word that I need you to understand, the word primary. When languages are official, government must fund that language, it must provide services in that language, and citizens have the right to use it. When a language is called primary, it means nothing changes. The government is not required to do anything differently. Primary is a complement. Official is a commitment. I can show you exactly what the word primary means in practice right now, today. In November 2025, the Manitoba government posted a job for an ASL interpreter. It was not classified as a translator. It was classified as an educational assistant. Why? because translator classification in this government only applies to official languages, English and French. ASL is not official, so it does not qualify, and it never has. That misclassification means lower pay, roughly half the industry rate. It means qualified interpreters do not apply. It means deaf people in government settings get inadequate interpretation. If Bill 6 passes with the word primary, that job posting does not change. That pay does not change, and that classification does not change. Nothing is fixed. That is what the word primary looks like in practice. That gap, this bill fails to close. I want to show you what happens when recognition has no teeth. New Zealand recognized New Zealand Sign Language as an official language in 2006. That is 20 years ago. They used the word official, stronger than what Manitoba is proposing. A deaf Maori woman by the name of Chanel K. Luke, who currently sits on the World Federation of the Deaf Youth Section Board, shared this statement just this week during their New Zealand Sign Language Week. And I quote, "There were no promises made towards access in education, health, or public service. Full access cannot be given unless something changes." New Zealand used stronger words and still got nothing binding. Manitoba is proposing the weaker word. I am telling you today, we cannot repeat that mistake. We cannot pass this bill and wait 20 years to find out it changed nothing. The ground reality in Manitoba. Deaf children in school divisions are placed with signing educational assistants, not qualified ASL interpreters. Those are not the same thing. An EA who knows some sign is not an interpreter. Some school divisions keep deaf students in their system, not because it's best for the child, but because it brings in funding. Manitoba has one deaf school. It has 17 deaf staff and 18 hearing staff, which on the face of it sounds balanced. But look at the breakdown. There are 9 hearing teachers and only 3 deaf teachers. There are 5 hearing staff in the support and resource team and 0 deaf staff. Educational assistants, 10 of them are deaf. 2 are hearing. Custodians, 2 are deaf, 0 are hearing. Do you see the pattern? Deaf people fill the lowest paid roles. Hearing people fill the professional roles. This is our deaf school. Our children should see deaf adults in leadership roles. Instead, they see deaf adults mostly in entry-level jobs. That sends a message, and that message is damaging. On October 7, the government held a consultation. Interpreters missed a key deaf input. They called it a success. An interpreter organization sent in a letter in December and got a meeting within 5 days. Deaf people ask for meetings about our needs, and we wait far longer. Bill 6, the first reading December 3rd. Second reading happened April 21st. That is 139 days. The Autism Strategy Act, first to second reading, happened in 3 days. 3 days versus 139 days, that tells you how much this bill was prioritized. These are the 10 of the many unanswered questions I have. All are submitted in writing for the record. 1, will deaf infants have access to ASL early intervention, funded and required by law? 2, will families who choose cochlear implants still be required to give their child access to sign language? 3, will Central Speech and Hearing Clinic be directed to stop deprioritizing ASL for deaf children? 4, will schools be required to use qualified ASL interpreters instead of signing EAs? 5, will Manitoba School for the Deaf be open to all deaf children in Manitoba, not just those in Winnipeg? When does the dormitory reopen? 6, will school divisions be required to tell families that Manitoba School for the Deaf is an option instead of keeping deaf children in their system for funding? 7, will there be funding for deaf students to attend Gallaudet University, Rochester Institute of Technology, Boston University, and California State University Northridge, the schools that actually produce deaf professionals? 8, will Manitoba School of the Deaf be required to hire more deaf teachers, deaf educational assistants, and deaf administrators at all levels? 9, will there be a concrete plan to end language deprivation in Manitoba? 10, will public settings be required to use deaf interpreters as British Columbia, Alberta, Ontario, and many United States do in the United States? 10 questions, but there are more, and every single one of them are unanswered by this bill. I am not here to reject this bill. I am here because I want it to be worth something. We need this committee to push for 6 things. 1, change the word primary to official. 2, add real commitments, funding, timelines, and accountability. 3, require qualified ASL interpreters in schools, not signing EAs. 4, open Manitoba School of the Deaf to all deaf children across Manitoba. Restore the dormitory. 5, fund early intervention, post-secondary access, and deaf interpreter training. 6, ensure that all future consultations are led by and fully representative of the deaf community. Recognition without accountability is not enough. We have waited long enough. This is our chance to do it right. Thank you. And thank you for the time to come and make my comments today.
So thank you for your presentation. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Minister Fontaine.
Thank you for your presentation and your feedback on Bill 6 and everything that you shared this evening. I also just want to share for folks that are watching and in the gallery as well. As I said earlier, our Deputy Clerk, Tim Abbott, will be sending out an email to folks tonight just to provide, if you would like, your feedback on how this evening went. Again, the Deputy Clerk is with the Legislative Assembly, and they are responsible for all of the ASL interpretation and also for the ASL interpretation for standing committees. So he will be sending out an email to all of the presenters.
Mr. Stadnicki, would you like to respond?
Yes, so I that wasn't actually a question, but I do want to emphasize again, as one of my earlier comments about deaf professionals, we have very limited access to deaf professionals, and yet the burden to provide access and to make sure this all happens still falls to a hearing person. So again, it's another opportunity where it's important to include deaf people in every step, whether it is policymaking, administration, deaf people should be included. And I want to make it clear too, by the way this is set up, I can't tell who is speaking to me. Everything is so small. I have no idea who is making comments or asking questions. It's very disappointing.
Ms. Byram.
Thank you, and thank you, Mr. Stadnicki, for your presentation here tonight, providing insight into what could further provide substance to this bill and calling on accountability once things are moving forward here. I do want to just ask, did the minister or were you consulted in any way in the design of this bill or in the wording of this bill? Did anybody reach out and consult with you on that?
Mr. Stadnicki.
I will send a supplementary package because I had a time limit of 10 minutes. I will add some additional information, but to answer your question, unfortunately, the minister accessibility officer was very selective. I happened to get a link and join that particular meeting, but that meeting was also a disaster with technology. This isn't the first time that we're seeing that. This is actually the second. And so it really cut into the meeting time by half of the time. And in that session, there was not really a discussion about the bill itself. It was very vague. It was more focused on terminology of small capital letter deaf or lowercase deaf, D and deaf, or uppercase. So there was no discussion about what the expectation. It was really very ambiguous. And so it was like we can't have a lot of discussion before it comes to legislation and to the legislature. So I don't think that it was really an advisory opportunity. It was very selective and does not speak to the representation of all deaf Manitobans at all.
Mr. Schuler?
Good evening, Andrew, and thank you very much for your presentation. It was very passionate. And for some of us who've been here for over 27 years, we came to committee and you taught us quite a bit. And I appreciate in particular that you came forward with the 10 points and then more synthesized 6 points. And I know that we as the Progressive Conservative opposition will take that back. We'll have further conversations on what needs to be done with this legislation. So thank you for your spirited and passionate presentation.
Mr. Stadnicki, would you like to respond?
I know this was the opposition speaking. I appreciate knowing that. Can you tell me who the previous person who spoke to me prior to him and what their role was?
The previous person was Ms. Byram. She is also opposition member and critic. Mr. Stadnicki? I don't see any further questions or time for response. So thank you very much for your presentation, and we will continue on. And actually, before I call the next presenter, I just need order, please. I would like to inform the committee that under Rule 84-2, the following membership substitution has been made for this committee, effective immediately. MLA Malloway for MLA Redhead. Thank you. All right, I will now call on Mr. Jordan Sangalang, private citizen, and if I mispronounced your name, please correct me. Is this person also online?
Hold on, I don't think so. No, I don't see him.
I'm not seeing that. We're just checking online. I don't think
No,
we're...
he's not online, so he'll be dropped.
Okay, so he's not currently online, and I don't think he's currently here in person, so he will drop to the bottom of the list. We will move on to Trisha Amaro from Canada Deaf Grassroots Movement. She is online. Oh, I just need, sorry, I haven't recognized you. Apologies. So Trisha Amaro, please proceed with your presentation.
If I could give a little bit of background of who I am and my prior experience. And I was born and raised here in Manitoba. Been here for 50 years. Been here now for 50 years. Yeah, I'm the only deaf person from a hearing family. My parents were both not deaf. In that year, around 90 to 97, there are a lot of programs that were very oral based in 1997, and that kind of continued on till about 1979 till 1981. I was later taken and transferred to a different program for my education, but was really deprived of the access to American Sign Language by about 75%. Generationally, there is a 50% where I would have sign language, but also have been exposed to home sign, which was very home-based. 10% of my language, being that I was born to hearing parents, was impacted by how I could relate to my family. It was just signs that I was exposed to was really just, showing different concepts, showing different objects, very basic, not incredibly in-depth or abstract concepts, and very different from the experience of other deaf people growing up in a deaf family. And later on, a researcher by the name of William Stokey, who was a linguist and did further research into American Sign Language. He is also considered the father of ASL. And by the year of 1960s was when a lot of his research came out. And as that research was put out, people started recognizing, thinking about ASL as a language with various parameters. In the 1950s, the interpreter is not sure about the year on that, there was further advocacy towards sign languages and American Sign Language. So I want to emphasize the point about how this impacts the bill. Here in Manitoba, there are roughly 13,000 users of American Sign Language. And across Canada, there are roughly 357,000 deaf and hard of hearing who use sign language as a primary language. Of that group, about 85%, or roughly 75%, are faced with many barriers with employment, access to various services, limited captioning, for example, like the news not having captioning. Literacy skills are also varied within the group. And due to the fact that their primary language is ASL, their English literary skills are also often compromised because it is not their primary language. So for example, when we see sign language, it is important to have picture-in-picture, but that needs to be clear so that we can understand the language that is being presented to us. And at this point, I'm happy to answer any questions the committee might have. But I'm not able to see the interpreter.
Thank you for your presentation. I think they're able to change the screen so you can see the interpreter there. Okay, so do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Minister Fontaine.
I just want to thank you so much for your presentation this evening and sharing all of that information. That's really important information. And I appreciate you being here this evening at the Standing Committee on Bill 6. Miigwech.
Ms. Amaro, would you like to respond?
I'm happy to respond if there's any particular questions that want to come from the opposition, be it various parties, independents, liberal, conservative. I'm happy to always answer those questions, but I also hope that you're able to work together and make this nonpartisan so that you can go ahead and pass this bill past the Standing Committee for the benefit of the community.
Ms. Byram.
Good evening. I too wanted to say thank you, Trisha, for taking the time tonight and coming to present and share some of your concerns and maybe some of the challenges that you've seen as well, and for presenting here tonight. So thank you very much.
And Ms. Amaro, you can respond if you would like to Ms. Byram.
And I know that now that it's progressed to the standing committee, I'm hoping that this bill proceeds to further in the legislative process, and I look forward to seeing how that turns out. And I hope that it isn't stalled and it can be efficient.
Minister Fontaine.
I just wanted to let you know that it will pass standing committee this evening, and it will pass third reading and concurrence, and it will receive royal assent on June 1st. So as of June 1st, it will become law in Manitoba.
Ms. Amaro, if you'd like to respond.
I am very appreciative of that. Thank you so much. And I want to just say thank you for your patience and giving me the opportunity to put some words on the record and providing interpreters, and also just allowing me to speak to the experience that I have had in the past.
Okay, I see no further questions, so thank you very much, Ms. Amaro, for your presentation. I will now call on Ms. Cynthia Duboff, private citizen. Is she online? I don't believe she's online. Okay, and she's not here right now, so she will drop to the bottom of the list. So I will now call on Mr. Doug Motuk from Manitoba Deaf Association. Is he online? No. Oh, okay. So, Mr. Motuk, please proceed with your presentation.
Good evening, everyone. Honorable Minister Fontaine, and the MLAs that are here, and the staff as well. Before I go through my formal presentation, I would just like to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Doug Motuk, and I was born and raised in Manitoba, graduated from the School for the Deaf, or the Deaf School, pardon me, and have been in Winnipeg my whole life. I joined the Manitoba Deaf Association. I've been on the board now for a number of years. So the comments that I bring tonight are feedback from deaf community members, from town hall events that we have hosted. So it's a compilation of all of that feedback that I'm here to share with you. The deaf community's preference, shall I say, for American Sign Language is not a preference. It is their language of choice. Now, since 1988, there was a set of parents who had a son in Brandon, and they lobbied to have their son attend school at the deaf school. So there was a lot of discussion about how that would happen. Ultimately, the school was established, and at that time there were only 8 deaf students, which was great. Now, in terms of staffing the school, principal, teachers, they ended up getting staff from the deaf school in Minnesota, because they used ASL there. They thought, good job opportunity here in Winnipeg. They came here to teach those children. And since that time, the school has continued to grow, and the province has supported the deaf school ever since then. So thank you for that. So now I'd like to go through my formal submission. I'm sure all of you are familiar with the Accessible Canada Act, and it recognizes American Sign Language, listening to Quebecois, and Indigenous Sign Languages. And provinces are responsible for providing training in terms of use of sign language and providing interpreters. And so that is becoming more prevalent. For example, if somebody is interested in getting a passport, they have a virtual interpreters, what we call video relay interpreters. They can go into the passport office and connect with interpreters. So that's one initiative of the Accessible Canada Act. Now, I believe that we are here to talk about amendments to this act, and I think the primary amendment should be regulations in terms of employment standards, communication, etc. With the Manitoba Accessibility Office, there have been discussions, and some of these recommendations align with the Manitoba Accessibility Office. So one of the things we'd like to speak to is who is responsible for providing interpreters. Now, here we have a good example of the department who has arranged interpreters. So just a moment for the interpretation. The interpreter is clarifying here. So for the Legislative Assembly, I've seen that there is much improved access. I have actually watched some of the sessions, and I've seen the interpreters there, so thank you for that. Emergency announcements are also, and any announcements that the Premier makes are also very important to consider accessibility. And I know a few years ago, during COVID, interpreters were present on screen because it was important. This was life or death for people, and hiring an interpreter in order to provide access was crucial. Another example of where access is definitely needed is during elections. Often deaf people try to contact candidates, and they wait. They have to go through the red tape of getting an interpreter. I think that could be improved, hopefully in the future, when sign language members of the signing community make contact, that an interpreter is provided immediately. Next, I'd like to speak to the value of providing access in education and making American Sign Language available for deaf children. And by doing so, that enhances their literacy levels and ultimately their success later on in life. Universities and colleges also need to be providing American Sign Language interpreters, because if they do so, they have an opportunity to have more gainful employment if they attend post-secondary institutions. So a high percentage of deaf people, around 60%, are underemployed, and so and undereducated, and so providing access in those institutions will support the overall quality of life of deaf people. Another concern is in terms of healthcare. When a deaf person needs to go to the hospital, they end up waiting until an interpreter can arrive, and so medical professionals need to be trained in how to triage best and how to get interpreters in there when they're needed, so basically to mitigate health risks. And I think that ultimately that would save money in the long term if healthcare is provided early on rather than later. And ultimately access to communication is what I'm suggesting. And for children to learn sign language, most of them don't learn from their parents, And so they need an avenue to be able to learn sign language, and their parents also need that as well. Education needs to be provided to businesses, to public service, in terms of how to communicate with a deaf person. If a deaf person shows up at their door, how do they interact with them? Just providing that sort of education so there's opportunities and people can grow from that. Emergency preparedness is key. Ambulance, police services, EMS, providing some training about how they can communicate with deaf people. So you may or may not know, but Canada has a video relay service. And so what a deaf person can do is connect with the video relay service or video remote interpreting, and they would have an interpreter available immediately when there's accessing those services, which then relieves the stress for accessing communication. So public libraries, the selection of books is important. When selecting books, it's important that consideration be given to books that feature American Sign Language. And staff need training. They need workshops. They need information about how to work with deaf people, how to communicate with them. And again, if they're using video remote interpreting services, how to access that. And providing an interpreter is the best access always. So these are all suggestions that we believe should be made as amendments to this bill or to become regulations later on. I don't know if that is how the work of this committee or not. ASL and LSQ are valued in the community. Whether there are folks from Quebec or New Brunswick, which also has a large LSQ community, we have to fly interpreters in order to provide access for them. So we need to consider both ASL and LSQ when providing access. So that is the sum of my comments. Thank you.
So thank you for your presentation. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Minister Fontaine.
Miigwech, thank you so much for your presentation today, and it's lovely to see you again. I'm really glad to hear that you've been in contact with our office, the MAO, and some of the good conversations with Darren, who's here tonight, and his team. So we really do appreciate everything, all of the insights and recommendations that you've shared with us in my office, and then obviously with Darren in his office at MAO. So it has been taken to heart, and I appreciate you. And I really do appreciate the Manitoba Deaf Association. You folks do really important and phenomenal work all across Manitoba and for Manitoba citizens. So miigwech so much.
Mr. Motuk, would you like to respond?
You may be familiar with Jennifer Howard, who was a former minister, and she was responsible for accessibility for 6 years, I believe. That was from 2009 to 2015. And so we had a lot of conversations with her and with the accessibility office at that time. So a lot of this has stemmed from that time and going forward.
Ms. Byram.
Thank you, Mr. Motiak. My name is Jody Byram. I am representing the opposition critic for families and accessibility. And I just want to thank you for being here tonight and making your presentation. And I also want to say thank you for touching on the emergency services component and the challenges that your community face in that. That's not the first time we've heard that, as well as some of the other challenges that you shared with us here tonight. and for taking the time to come and be here and present. Thank you.
Mr. Motuk, would you like to respond?
No, thank you. I will just keep in touch with MAO, and we'll go from there.
So I'm not seeing any further questions, so thank you very much. All right, so I will now call on Mrs. Erica Dugay, Resource Center for Manitobans who are deaf blind. And please correct me if I mispronounced your last name. So please proceed with your presentation, Mrs. Dugay.
Thank you. My name is Erica Dugay. I am one of the coordinators at the Resource Center for Manitobans who are deaf blind, RCMDB. This evening, I will actually be presenting for two organizations. I am representing our own, RCMDB, but also the Manitoba Deaf Blind Association, MDBA. We will be discussing the importance of ASL and TASL, or tactile ASL, in the deaf-blind community. RCMDB is a nonprofit organization that offers accessibility services and resources to Manitobans who have a combination of vision and hearing loss. MDBA is an advocacy group made up of deafblind adults that advocate, support, and affiliate with RCMDB. I will begin first with the presentation by Jane Sayer, the chairperson of MDBA. Jane says, I am sorry I cannot be there tonight to present myself, but MDBA works closely with RCMDB, and I have asked Erica Dugay to present my paper, and I'm sure she can answer any questions that you may have. I would like to be assured that deafblind communication is part of Bill 6. I personally use tactile American Sign Language, which means putting my hands over top of the interpreter's hands and feeling them sign to me. Many people think that as long as an interpreter knows ASL, they can do TASL, and that is a wrong way of thinking. To be an interpreter that knows how to work with deaf-blind people very well, it takes a lot of practice to be good at TASL. ASL is more than just signing, because it takes in facial expressions, for example. The facial expressions along with the sign can mean different things. Many signs feel the same. And so an interpreter needs to learn a way to communicate the mood or incorporate the facial expression used with that sign for blind people. That is just one example, but there are many examples about TASL that need to be incorporated into the interpretation that people with vision can see. If the interpreter did not include the visuals as well as the sign itself, I would be left out. It takes a lot of practice and knowledge about deafblind people to become a skilled interpreter. I would also like to mention, I personally have Usher's syndrome, so previously I did have vision, however very limited. Many people in the deafblind community still have usable vision, but it may be the same as myself, very limited. Legal blindness can be caused by many, many different diseases, head and brain traumas, and various conditions. This may mean that the deaf-blind person requires one-on-one interpreters. They need them possibly very close, or they need to sign in their hands. Maybe they have fuzzy vision and a limited field, and trying to follow a platform interpreter is too difficult because they're not close enough. One form deaf-blind people may use is to place their hand on the interpreter's arm and to feel the movements when they're signing. This is called tracking, but the interpreter needs to be close enough for them to do that. I would also like to mention the terminology in Bill 6. When speaking of a medical condition, the one word deaf-blind, lowercase, small d, small b, is often appropriate. However, when you're talking about the actual people, we have our own culture and community, and we use capital D hyphen capital B for blind. Across Canada, every area has their own terminology of how they refer to their deaf blindness, such as some say they have Usher's. But here, I'm only speaking of the terminology used by the Manitoba deafblind community. Being that this is a Manitoba bill, the correct terminology of accessibility to be used should be what the Manitoba deafblind community uses. I feel it is important to use Manitoba terms because the deafblind people made the decision of the terminology and how they wish to be described. Many places, agencies, or hearing-sighted people pick the terms that they used instead of the people who are deafblind. I am proud that Manitoba listens to the consumers. I am proud that our agency does not force their terminology, but instead accepts what we, the deafblind, wish to be called. And I hope that the government has the same respect for our community. In Manitoba, we no longer use the word interveners as our service providers. The word intervener is a classic example of a word picked by a hearing-sighted person for our service providers. Many people in the deafblind community didn't even like that title, but it is a word their agencies used, and some even used the term intervention services. This made us feel like we were drug or alcohol abusers. Manitoba did use that term for many years, and many people didn't understand what it meant. If you said, "This was my intervener," they had no clue what that meant or what their role was. I personally worked with the deafblind community, interpreters, and other members in our community to find a new term for our services. The new terms we use in Manitoba are Deafblind Accessibility Interpreter, DBAI, Deafblind Accessibility Support, DBAS. The DBASs are support staff, often with knowledge of ASL, that provide quality of life support, such as helping with everyday banking, shopping, hair appointments, etc. While meetings, presentations, workshops, and medical appointments are interpreted by DBAIs, who are academically trained and graduated. RCMDB is the only organization in Manitoba to provide full deafblind accessibility services. Other agencies may solely provide interpreters, but as explained previously, that does not mean full accessible communication for the deafblind person unless they are skilled and have remained involved in the deafblind community. I feel it is very important to acknowledge that RCMDB is the only agency in Manitoba that has knowledge of what the deafblind community's needs are. As previously mentioned, I have ushers and had vision, but that changed over time. So unless the agency is aware of the person's needs, such as our CMDB is, it would be hard to send an appropriate person to interpret for us. Reality is that each deafblind person is unique. None of us have the same communication method. What may work for me with TASL may not work for another person. We are a very unique group. However, I strongly believe we have the right to clear communication, the same as deaf and hard of hearing people do. Deafblind people need to strongly be included in this bill. Thank you.
So thank you for your presentation. And do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Minister Fontaine.
I want to thank you for your presentation this evening. It was incredibly informative, and I just have to say that we have hosted folks in my office, and I think that was very, very early on when I first became a minister, and my chief of staff can attest that that was actually one of my favorite meetings that I've ever had in my office, and I learned so much that day, and it really was I don't know how to, it was just a beautiful meeting. It was really beautiful to witness the way folks communicate. And I just want to say, Miigwech, I really do appreciate your presentation and all of the work that you do.
Just a moment for the mic to turn on. Ms. Dugay.
I have the RCMDB portion of the presentation as well. That was for Jane Sayer. She was the chairperson for the MDBA. Can I continue with my presentation?
I'm sorry, there is a little bit of a mix-up here. There.
Oh, hold on.
Just one moment. All right, so we will go back to the presentation. There is,
I would ask if that's okay.
is it okay with the committee meeting, or the committee members? It'll be 3 minutes remaining, back to the presentation phase for Mrs. Dugay. Okay, so Mrs. Dugay, please proceed with your presentation. 3 minutes remaining.
Thank you. Myself, as one of the coordinators of RCMDB and as a deafblind accessibility interpreter myself, I understand why it is imperative that the deafblind community and the language that they use is expressed clearly in Bill 6. So many people, professionals, and organizations don't understand or even know about the deafblind community, let alone their accessibility needs. Accessibility begins with recognition, and it needs to be recognized that sign language is also used by the deafblind community. Therefore, the following should be considered in Bill 6, where it says, sign languages are distinct languages that are integral to the culture of the deaf community, should also include deafblind community as well. Whereas many members of the deaf community use sign language as their first language, should also include deafblind community as well. And whereas people learn sign languages to communicate with members of the deaf community, including family, friends, and colleagues and students, should also include deafblind community as well. Inclusive language is important, and I hope that the information that MDBA and RCMDB has shared with you today this evening outlines the impact that Bill 6 and the language used to formalize this act is considered. I hope that you leave here today with a better understanding of deafblind people, their disability, their abilities, their language, and their accessibility needs. I hope we have provided you with the insight needed to ensure that further inclusion to this unique community is recognized, and also the importance and impact sign language has to deafblind people. Thank you.
That was very impressive at the speed at which you finished your presentation there. So we're doing a little bit of jumping around, but to the subcommittee, there was 3 minutes and 52 seconds remaining in the Q&A. Are we okay to resume? Okay, so I'll just put...
The minister goes first.
Yes.
I can make this happen. Oh, you can make this happen.
Yeah. It was...
Yeah, perfect.
That's what was remaining on the Q&A.
So can I go?
Yeah, Minister Fontaine.
I just want to let you know that we will make those changes that you've just suggested. So our Ledge Council is working on it right now, and we will do those amendments here tonight.
Mrs. Dugay.
Thank you very much.
Ms. Byram.
Thank you, and I want to thank you, Erica, for being present here tonight and sharing further insight to what this bill means to you, and also providing the feedback that you did that clearly was important. And so again, thank you for taking the time and making your presentation.
No further questions?
No, I'm good.
Okay, so I see no further questions, so thank you very much for your presentation. Okay. So I see we're currently at the end of the ASL, the first round through the ASL list, so we're just going to go back and do another call and see if the previous presenters that weren't here, see if they're present now. So I will now call on Mr. Jordan Sangalang, private citizen. Okay, so we will be striking Mr. Jordan Sangalang from the list. He is not online nor present. And now I will now call on Ms. Cynthia Duboff, private citizen.
And I don't see her online either.
And she is not online, and I do not see her present, so she will also be struck off the list.
Correct.
And then is there a script for this?
So yes, the one here.
so sorry. Yeah. Is there anyone else present in the room who is not registered that wishes to present to the committee with ASL interpretation? Okay. I do not see anyone, so thank you to the ASL interpreters for their hard work this evening. The interpreters who are currently in the room may now leave. ASL interpretation will continue for the rest of the meeting on the public broadcast. Okay, so now we are going to move to out-of-town presenters. So that will take us to Bill 36. And I will now call on Bert Crocker, private citizen. Yeah. So, Mr. Crocker, please proceed with your presentation, and just a friendly reminder, you have 10 minutes.
I'm sorry, I'm a bit hard of hearing, and I'm having trouble hearing what you're saying. Can you turn up the volume, please?
I said, please proceed with your presentation, and just a reminder, you have 10 minutes.
Okay. Thank you very much. Good evening, honorable members and government staff. I'm here this evening as a private individual who's been involved in child welfare in Manitoba in one way or another since 1969. Since 1981, that involvement has been with Indigenous child welfare organizations. I have a Master of Social Work degree and was formerly a registered social worker. I can explain why my registration lapsed during questions if there is an interest. I want to begin by making it clear that I support the intent of just about everything in Bill 36, and particularly the additional supports in Section 50.1. I do have some concerns, though. One of them is the lack of procedural safeguards in the proposed Division 5 of Part 6. In the proposed new Division 5, there are no procedural safeguards that would trigger a closer second look at the viability of such a termination. As per the provisions of subsection 76.21 sub 4, the child 12 or older, the agency, the parents would only be notified after the fact. This makes it impossible for the affected child to have any say in the arrangement, which is a violation of the due process provisions of Section 7 of Canada's Charter of Rights and Freedoms, and probably by the Canadian Human Rights Act, both of which have precedence in these types of situations. That conflict is not ameliorated by the proposed continued existence of Section 45, which covers the normal court process for the earlier termination of an agency's order. There is a double standard that would deprive the Indigenous child of due process. The notification after the fact conflicts with subsection 9 sub 3 sub b of the federal legislation, an act respecting First Nations, Inuit, and Métis children, youth, and families, which provides for substantive equality. That clause B is, a child must be able to exercise his or her rights under this act, including the right to have his or her views and preferences considered in decisions that affect him or her, and he or she must be able to do so without discrimination, including discrimination based on sex or gender identity or expression. This provision in Bill 36 deprives a mature child of the opportunity for input into the decision, and a small or incapacitated child from the benefit of advocacy. It must be recognized that those operating under certain pressures will not always make the correct decisions. One example is contained in the 2004 inquest report into the death of a teenage girl who, against her wishes, was reunified with her family of origin, given that her abusive stepfather was still in the home. Judge K.M. Curtis, who wrote the inquest report, stated the following at paragraph 26, and I took out the names. At the start of this inquest, the agency took responsibility for failing SR while she was in their care. The agency's philosophy behind the focus on reunification of families is one that is understandable given the history of the name of the isolated community, and it is not inappropriate. Unfortunately, that focus can sometimes lead to tunnel vision to the detriment of many members of a family. Another example of this tunnel vision can be found in the tragic death of Gage Gimo, a toddler who was placed into the culturally appropriate home of a great aunt who was apparently deemed the most suitable relative. The great aunt was convicted of failing to provide the necessaries of life and received house arrest. The details are contained in a Section 4 report that was formerly found on the website of the Southern First Nations Network of Care. I looked recently, I could not find it. The other concern I have is the lack of grandfathering the eligibility for the benefits under the new Section 50.1 for those children that have spent significant portions of their lives in CFS care. It would be contrary to their best interest if those children that have spent significant portions of their lives in CFS care and are then discharged, if they cannot also benefit from the supports provided by Section 50.1. I believe the government has a fiduciary obligation toward those children. While there are differences between this and the Children's Special Allowances situation, there are sufficient similarities that make it likely that there will be litigation if Section 50.1 is passed in its present form. In terms of my recommendations, first of all, I would recommend putting Bill 36 on hold, improve it over the summer, and bring back an improved version in the fall after appropriate consultations. Failing that, I would suggest passing a motion this evening directing that grandfathering provisions be added to Section 50.1, and secondly, pass a motion this evening directing that Section 76.21 be amended to include advance notification to those originally served or entitled to service regarding the intended cancellation of the order or VSG in question, and that all those so served or notified are entitled to have input into the decision. And finally, and more generally, it is important for this current legislature to be aware of one of the reasons for the failure of the 1994 Framework Agreement Initiative. That was supposed to be a 10-year plan between Canada and the Assembly of Manitoba Chiefs, and the goals that were included in that were the dismantling of the Department of Indian Affairs, repealing or amending the Indian Act, and developing First Nations authorities for self-government, restoring the jurisdiction to First Nations in the areas of executive, legislative, administrative, and judicial powers. The details of what happened to the FII in the first 3 years were captured in a report released in 1999 by Mang Associates. It stated in part that the AMC position included that as part of the inherent right to self-government, the Charter of Rights would not apply to the exercising of jurisdiction by First Nations people. That's a direct quote from the Mang report. The position of the Government of Canada included that the Charter of Rights must apply. That can be found on PDF pages 54 and 55 of that report. The URL has been distributed to you or will be distributed shortly, so you can do your own research to verify that. Awareness of the history of multiple aspects of these complex situations is important if we are not to repeat the mistakes of others, but instead learn from those mistakes. Thank you very much.
So thank you for your presentation. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Minister Fontaine.
Thank you for your presentation. I appreciate your words and you being here this evening to add some commentary on Bill 36. As you know, Manitoba is on the path to jurisdiction for First Nations and Métis asserting jurisdiction over child welfare. It is a very unique historical moment that we're in, not only here in Manitoba, but certainly across Canada because of Bill C-92. And so I'll share with you that we're actually working with 22 First Nations and the Métis right now on asserting jurisdiction. So child welfare in Manitoba is going to look very different in the next 5, 10, and 20 years as more First Nations assert jurisdiction over their children. And Bill 36 is about supporting that pathway towards jurisdiction so that our children as Indigenous people remain with our families in our communities and in our nation. So I appreciate the words that you put on the record. Miigwech, thank you so much.
Mr. Crocker, you can respond if you would like.
I'm sorry, say again, please.
If you would like to respond to what the minister said, you can.
No.
Ms. Byram?
Thank you, Mr. Crocker, for taking the time tonight and being part of the committee and making your presentation, sharing your knowledge, experiences, and also bringing forward your recommendations to help strengthen this bill. I, again, just appreciate you being here and taking the time. Thank you.
Mr. Crocker, would you like to respond?
Okay. Thank you and good evening.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. All right, so we will go back to Bill 6 presenters, and we will go to, I will now call on Ms. Lou Roberts, private citizen. And this person is not online. I don't see them in here, so they will drop to the bottom of the list. I will now call on Mrs. Fernanda Veo of Latinas Manitoba Incorporated, and she is online. So Mrs. Veo, please proceed with your 10-minute presentation.
Thank you. Good evening, Honorable Chair and committee members. My name is Fernanda Vallejo, and I'm the founder of Latinas Manitoba. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak today. I also want to thank Minister Nahanni Fontaine and the Manitoba Legislative Assembly for taking this important step through Bill 6 and the recognition of sign languages in Manitoba. Okay, so that means that nobody should be left behind because of the way they communicate, and that's fantastic. As an immigrant, as a Latina woman, it means a lot to me and to my community. In immigrant communities, we already understand what language barriers feels like. Many families arrive in Canada feeling lost and disconnected because they don't fully understand the system or the language. Now imagine being in a family where the parents, they can be refugees or just newcomers, they speak only Spanish, and the child is deaf. They don't know where to go. So many newcomer families arrive already overwhelmed trying to survive day by day. That is why I believe we should also focus on preparing families with information and resources even before they arrive to Manitoba or to Canada. We need stronger strategies that help mothers, parents, caregivers, and people living with disabilities feel supported from the beginning. This can include accessible information in different languages, interpretation support, community guidance, and stronger connections between organizations and family. I would love to connect with people from the other organizations that presented today so I can learn a bit more about their job and what we can do for communities. Okay, so no parent should feel alone while trying to understand how to support their child. This topic is also personal for me. I have an aunt who lost her hearing when she was a baby. Growing up, I saw how difficult communication could become. I saw moments where she felt excluded, misunderstood, or invisible for people. That experience stayed with me for my entire life. And today, as a community leader, I understand even more how important communication is for dignity, independence, education, healthcare, employment, and mental health. Sign language is not simply gestures or hand movements. It is a real language. It has culture, identity, grammar, history, and community. When society does not provide access, deaf people are excluded from opportunities that many of us take for granted. This recognition matters because it sends a message of respect. It says your voice matters, your language matters, your community matters. Through my work with Latinos Manitoba, I met newcomer women and families every week. Many are trying to navigate healthcare systems, schools, childcare, immigration, and employment. Sometimes the problem is not a lack of services. The problem is that people do not know what resources exist or how to access them. I believe the same thing happens with sign language accessibility. We are making progress with laws and recognition, but we still need education, awareness, and real community access. I would also love to see more support for families with deaf children inside the school and community spaces. Many parents do not understand how the education system works for children with hearing loss. Some children may need interpreters, speech support, technology, educational assistance, or special communications accommodations in a school. Families should not have to discover everything alone. I know there are a lot of supports, and when newcomers come here, they start navigating the system, and there are resources in the school. But for families that English is not the first language, I'm trying to think how we can support them from the very beginning. Okay. It's also about making sure families understand the system, feel supported, and are not isolated while trying to help their children or isolate their children, right? I also believe we should continue improving technology and training opportunities for people living with disabilities, not only for the deaf community, but for many others as well. For example, people who are blind or visually impaired, many need accessible to technology, audio tools, screen readers, transportation support or assistance, and others. Technology today can open many doors, but only if people know how to use it and have access to it. That is why investigating in accessibility training is so important. We should continue training teachers, healthcare workers, community staff, interpreters, and also teaching at the schools, at public schools, sign languages. So our kids, they are our future. They'll be able to communicate with other children with disabilities. Inclusion should not depend only on the individual trying harder. Society must also adapt, learn, and become more accessible for everyone. I believe Manitoba has an opportunity to become a leader in accessibility, innovation, and inclusive community support. It is about creating opportunities for people to fully participate in society with dignity and independence. That is why I would like to share a few simple ideas. First, we need accessible information in multiple languages, including Spanish. Families should easily understand what interpretation services exist in Manitoba and how to request them. Second, we need more community workshops and partnerships. Organizations, schools, and community centers could work together to teach basic sign language communication. I'm not talking about becoming professional interpreters. I mean simple communication that can help in daily life. Greeting someone, asking if they are okay, understanding if there's an emergency, helping a child feel included. And finally, we need to continue investigating and training more interpreters here in Manitoba and making these opportunities more accessible to diverse communities. Inclusion becomes stronger when everyone is invited to participate. I'm not asking Manitoba to reinvent the wheel. reinvent the wheel. I'm simply asking us to continue building a province where accessibility, diversity, and dignity are truly for everyone. To finish, I want to leave one final thought. Recognition sign languages is not charity, it's about respect, it's about human dignity, it's about inclusion. And this is the kind of leadership that helps build a stronger Manitoba for everyone. Thank you so much.
So thank you for your presentation. Do members of the committee have questions for the presenter? Minister Fontaine.
I just want to say, miigwech, for your presentation. It's always lovely to see you at Standing Committee, taking the time out of your evening from your children and to spend some time with a bunch of politicians. So I do really appreciate you. And I want to just say, miigwech, for sharing the story of your aunt and all of the recommendations and, you know, the vision that you have for essentially one Manitoba. So I appreciate you. Miigwech so much.
Mrs. Veo, would you like to respond to the minister?
You are welcome. I was hoping to be one of the first ones because I have my kids here around. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. And I hope I want to remind you this: if you need ever to translate a document or something into Spanish, Latinas Manitoba is here. I know that I'm always mentioning that, but thank you.
Ms. Byram.
Thank you, and lovely to see you again. And I just want to say thank you for taking the time to make your presentation here tonight. And I also want to say thank you for the work that you do in your community to welcome newcomers and to help individuals navigate through some of the challenges that they face here in your Spanish community. So again, thank you and for making your presentation here.
Mrs. Veo, would you like to respond?
Thank you. Yeah, I would like to explore the idea that I mentioned of preparing people and community before they move to the province or even to Canada. Okay.
All right, I see no further questions, so thank you very much for your presentation. I will now call on Mr. Rahimim Enoch Kouad, private citizen. It's not online? All right, he is not online. I don't believe I see him in the room, so he will drop down to the bottom of the list. I will now call on Mrs. Natasha Tuck, private citizen. And that person is also not online. Okay, so I think we are going to go back to the top of the list. I will now call on Ms. Lou Roberts, private citizen. Not online. Okay, that person is not online and they are not here. They are being struck from the list. I will now call on Mr. Rahimim Enoch Kouad, private citizen. Still not online. Okay, he's not here. He will be crossed off the list. And I will now call on Mrs. Natasha Tuck. Still not online? Still not. Okay, and not in person, so she will be crossed off the list.
Just check to make sure.
I'm just
I think we are done. Yep.
Okay. So that concludes the list of presenters that I have before me. In what order does the committee wish to proceed with clause-by-clause consideration of these bills? Mr. Gertson.
I would propose in numerical order if it's in agreement with this esteemed committee.
It has been proposed to go in numerical order. How is that agreed? Okay, agreed and so ordered.
Legal counsel has requested a 10-minute recess.
Okay.
Because they're working on translation of document.
Okay, so legal counsel has requested a 10-minute recess.
Well, can we, sorry.
Minister Fontaine.
Can we go on to Bill 36 and then come back to Bill 6?
It has been proposed to go with Bill 36 and then come back. Is that agreed? Okay, agreed and so ordered. So we will go to Bill 36. Does the minister responsible for Bill 36 have an opening statement? Minister Fontaine.
Bill 36 supports Indigenous governments in reassuming and asserting their inherent jurisdiction over child and family services by removing administrative and procedural barriers that currently slow or complicate transitions. Bill 36 expands the definition of Indigenous law to include laws enacted under provincially ratified self-government agreements. This ensures Indigenous child and family service laws are fully recognized in Manitoba legislation, regardless of how the pathway of jurisdiction interacts with the federal legislative framework. Bill 36 also enables the statutory director to terminate provincial supervision or guardianship orders at the request of an Indigenous service provider, where Indigenous laws apply and both parties agree. This creates a clear and efficient transition process while maintaining notice and awareness in the provincial system. In addition, Bill 36 addresses a long-standing gap for young people aging out of care. Currently, only permanent wards are eligible for supports past the age of majority. Here, I haven't touched that. Thank you. The introduction of new agreement types without supporting legislative amendments means youth in temporary, voluntary, kinship, or customary care agreements would have been excluded. Bill 36 extends eligibility for these voluntary supports to young adults who are aging out of care under a broader range of care agreements without requiring the severing of family or community ties. These amendments remove barriers, close gaps, and better align Manitoba's child and family services system with its commitment to reconciliation and Indigenous jurisdiction. They also help support improved outcomes for children and youth involved in child and family services. I also just want to take a moment to acknowledge my team who is here this evening from our Jurisdiction Transition Office and our ADM. For doing incredible work in child welfare and, you know, really appreciating and taking hold of this path of decolonizing child welfare and this path of reconciliation and you know, supporting nations on where they are at on this path of jurisdiction. And I've said it many, many times, child welfare in Manitoba is going to look very, very different in hopefully this year, and then 5 years, and 10 years, and 20 years. And Manitoba can be proud of the work that we're doing to decolonize this system and work with and support First Nations and Métis in asserting jurisdiction, because after so many years of a colonial provincial system and federal system, Indigenous children will be with their families, with their communities, surrounded by their kin, immersed in their language, on their lands, and in their nations. So I appreciate all the work that goes into all of the legislative amendments that we've been doing in the last 2.5 years, 3 years to support jurisdiction. There's a lot of work that goes into it, a lot of heart work as well, and so I appreciate all of our team. And I look forward to Bill 36 receiving royal assent very, very soon.
We thank the minister. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? Ms. Byram.
Thank you. I want to start off by saying that this is important legislation, just like any effort to make Manitoba's young people safer and more supported. There are areas where our Progressive Conservative team will continue to ask questions and seek accountability from this government on the broader child welfare system. We recognize that this bill does contain some important measures. Indigenous youth have been separated from their families, their culture, and their communities. We've seen the results and the impacts of this across the province and broader than that. The overrepresentation of Indigenous youth in care remains one of the most serious social challenges that we are facing here in the province and in the country. We understand that Bill 36 seeks to address some of these challenges by expanding the definition, Indigenous law, to include laws that are enacted by Indigenous governing bodies. This is an important step. It also expands on the supports for young adults transitioning out of care, so they are not simply cut off from care the moment that they turn 18 years old. We all know that this is a very important and vulnerable age for young adults, and it's important that we help to support as they age out of the system, as they may be trying to finish school, secure stable housing, and find employment, all while navigating an emotional and stressful time in their life. Most Manitobans would agree that turning 18 doesn't suddenly mean that we don't need someone in our lives who will support us and prepare us to live on our own and navigate the world independently. Those are all important steps. Moving forward, it's important that we have detailed agreements, clear timelines, and strong coordination to ensure that no child falls through the cracks during the transition. Based on some of the information we have received here in a written submission, it was clear that there wasn't a full and wholesome consultation done in drafting this legislation, and disappointed to learn in that part of it, consultation with some of those providers, and seeing that some of the resources would be available and accessible to all. We know that every child in Manitoba deserves safety, stability, and the chance to succeed, and young adults leaving care deserve the support as they transition into independence. Thank you.
We thank the member. During the consideration of a bill, the enacting clause and the title are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order. Also, if there is agreement from the committee, the chair will call clauses in blocks that conform to pages, with the understanding that we will stop at any particular clause or clauses where members may have comments, questions, or amendments to propose. Is that agreed?
Agreed.
Shall clauses 1 and 2 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 1 and 2 are accordingly passed. Shall clauses 3 through 5 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 3 through 5 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 6 pass?
Pass.
Clause 6 is accordingly passed. Shall clause 7 pass? Clause 7 is accordingly passed. Shall clauses 8 and 9 pass?
Pass.
Clauses 8 and 9 are accordingly passed. Shall clause 10 pass?
Pass.
Clause 10 is accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass?
Pass.
The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass? The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported? Agreed. The bill shall be reported. All right, we will now move to Bill number 6. Does the minister responsible for Bill 6 have an opening statement? Minister Fontaine.
Bill 6 creates a new legislation to recognize American Sign Language, Quebec Sign Language, Indigenous and tactile sign languages in Manitoba. It recognizes the linguistic and cultural uniqueness of sign languages and affirms their vital role these languages play in identity, community, and culture of deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind Manitobans. A sign language is the first language for many deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind Manitobans. American Sign Language, Quebec Sign Language, Indigenous and tactile sign languages are distinct languages with their own grammar, structure, and cultural heritage. This bill recognizes the unique position of sign languages as primary languages, not merely as an accessibility tool. We were guided by this work from the United Nations Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities frameworks, which affirm the inherent right to use sign languages and recognizes them as part of cultural heritage. Planning for this bill began in 2024, and it reflects almost 2 years of careful work and meaningful collaboration with deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind Manitobans, their families, and community leaders who have worked tirelessly to ensure sign languages are respected and recognized. I want to say miigwech to the members of the deaf, hard of hearing, and deaf-blind community who participated in consultations on this legislation, including Manitoba Deaf Association President Shauna Joint and board member Doug Motuk, Deaf Center Manitoba Chairperson Sheila Montney, and other members of Deaf Center Manitoba, members of the Resource Center for Manitobans who are deaf-blind, the Manitoba Deaf Sports Association, Manitoba Possible, Red River College, the University of Winnipeg, and the Manitoba School for the Deaf, and many more. We incorporated their feedback to shape this bill. The deaf, hard of hearing, and deafblind communities have had a direct hand in what will become law in Manitoba. And I also just want to share that we were trying to do it this evening, but we want to just make sure that we're taking our time. So there will be some of the recommendations that came from presenters this evening to make sure that we have all of the language for deaf, deafblind, and hard of hearing all throughout Bill 6. So we will be making those amendments at report stage amendments. So I want to assure Manitobans that came to present that those changes will be made as well. And so I want to thank all of our communities who have worked with us in ensuring Bill 6 will become law on June 1st. Miigwech.
We thank the minister. Does the critic from the official opposition have an opening statement? Ms. Byram.
I want to begin, first of all, doing a shout out to the ASL interpreters again that were here tonight to perform or to interpret for those that were presenting here. They do a great job here, not just tonight, but during our sessions when they sign our daily House proceedings. And I also want to begin by indicating that our caucus will be supporting this legislation. I agree with the presenters that we heard from here tonight. Much more is needed to support the deaf and deaf-blind Manitobans. There is some indicated, more resources are needed as well as funding to support some of their needs. For many Manitobans, sign language is their first language. It is how they communicate at home, at work, at school, and in their communities. This legislation acknowledges that reality into provincial law. The bill also recognizes that there's not just one sign language used in Manitoba. Different communities use different forms of sign language, including Indigenous sign languages and tactile sign languages used by members of the deaf-blind community. This bill recognizes the sign languages, including ASL, Quebec Sign Language, Indigenous sign languages, and tactile sign languages as the primary languages of communication for deaf and deaf-blind communities in Manitoba. Our caucus believes this is a reasonable and positive step forward, but recognition alone is not enough, and we heard that from presenters here as well. Actions speak louder, and those actions matter. Accessibility must also exist in practice. Manitobans still face barriers when it comes to accessing interpretation services, government programs, education, healthcare, and public information. And again, that was very evident here tonight in many of the presentations that we heard from. Legislation is important, but the government also has a responsibility to ensure that the services are actually accessible and recognition is matched with practical support. I also want to acknowledge the work of the members of the deaf and deaf-blind communities, along with the advocates, educators, interpreters, and the families who have pushed for greater awareness and accessibility over many years. As the official opposition, I mentioned I support the legislation that improves the inclusion and accessibility for Manitobans. We will continue asking questions about the implementation and whether government services are keeping pace with the principles. This bill is a positive step forward, but I do have to say that it's unfortunate in how this came to be, because I believe this was in reaction to some very disgusting and disrespectful behavior and hot mic moment made by the very minister who is responsible for accessibility in the province of Manitoba, and that's the Minister of Families. Thank you.
We thank the member. During the consideration of a bill, the preamble, the enacting clause, and the title are postponed until all other clauses have been considered in their proper order. Shall Clause 1 pass?
Pass.
Clause...
No.
I
recognize Mr. Gertson, please.
Mr. Gertson.
Madam Chairperson, I just have one question. Presenter Stadnicki had a number of different questions, and I'm sure that the Minister and her capable staff will go about answering those questions in due course for Mr. Stadnicki. But there was one that I wanted the Minister to put on the record in terms of what was the rationale for using the word primary languages as opposed to official languages. I might presume it was to ensure that there are other languages that could be recognized as well. But I would like to hear from the Minister why the word primary was used instead of official.
Minister Fontaine.
So just to be clear for the member, that is in line with the UN and federal language that's used. And so we're making sure that we're in line with all of those.
Mr. Gertson.
Thank the Minister for the response.
Shall Clause 1 pass?
Pass.
Clause 1 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 2 pass?
Pass.
Clause 2 is accordingly passed. Shall Clause 3 pass?
Pass.
Clause 3 is accordingly passed. Shall the preamble pass?
Pass.
The preamble is accordingly passed. Shall the enacting clause pass?
Pass.
The enacting clause is accordingly passed. Shall the title pass? Pass. The title is accordingly passed. Shall the bill be reported?
Agreed.
Agreed, the bill shall be reported. The hour being 8:18, what is the will of the committee?
Rise.
Committee rise.